tradition.
For North Vancouver Lonsdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in order to speak in support of the throne speech. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, upon whose land we are able to hold these proceedings today. I'd also like, again, to take a moment to thank the people of North Vancouver Lonsdale for choosing me to serve them as their MLA. It is a beautiful riding that exists on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically those of the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations and the Squamish First Nations. And it is also a riding that has not put their faith into an NDP candidate since 1991, when former MLA David Treck was elected. My commitment to the people of North Vancouver Lonsdale is that I will work hard for them every day so that I might one day be worthy of this honor that they have bestowed upon me. This throne speech is one step towards that better BC that I promised people was possible. And so I am so grateful to have the opportunity to be able to rise and speak in favor of it. This throne speech is why I left a job I loved, a profession that I loved and that I was very fortunate to have in order to run in this election, so that I might become an MLA, so that I might be able to support this new government in their goals and their vision. So this throne speech is a wonderful small step. We do acknowledge it is an incremental step towards our greater vision and our goals. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, I became an MLA because I could no longer stand idly by while I learned more and more about how the previous government was hurting the people that I loved. They were hurting members of my family, my community, my neighbors, my colleagues, my friends. And hurt they have been. There have been three themes that I've noticed to the criticisms that the Liberals have laid against the throne speech and the new government. The first theme that I've noticed is economy, taxes, oil and gas, rah, rah, rah. The second theme I've noticed is ARG, remember the 90s, ARG. And the third theme I've noticed is rabble, rabble, rabble. It's been 8 weeks. Why haven't you fixed the problems that we've caused yet? Rabble, rabble, rabble. I don't think I need to address the third theme that I mentioned, but I would like to address the other two. Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded of a conversation that I had during the election earlier this year. I had knocked on the door of some community members to ask about the issues that mattered to them. And at this one home, a wife and a husband with small child in the woman's arms answered the door. I asked them how they felt about the upcoming election. Well, the husband began, I suppose what's most important to me is the economy. The economy is doing pretty well. I'm told by all the media, I'm told that the province has a large surplus, so I guess the BC Liberals know what they are doing. It's a story that I have told before, but I think it warrants repeating for this throne speech. But the wife beside him scoffed when he said this, and she scoffed loudly. If the economy is doing so well, she said, why are we working so hard to make ends meet? Why can't my sister find secure housing? Why can't we afford to pay for childcare? Why can't my mother receive the care that she needs? Why can't we save money for retirement when I take my child to the doctor? Why does it take an hour to catch a bus? It seems to me like the economy isn't worth anything to our family if that economy isn't actually working for us. You see, Mr. Speaker, British Columbians can see through rhetoric that contradicts their own lived experiences. Under the previous government, while the province enjoyed a surplus, it was the people of British Columbia, it was the people of North Vancouver, it was my parents, it was my family members, it was my community, my friends, my colleagues, it was they who paid, and paid for it dearly. The official opposition might criticize the proposed spending in our budget update, although it would be very strange for them, it is very strange for them to do this, given that their own throne speech echoed so much of what we are now proposing as well. But to do so, they confirm exactly how little they have learned about the experience that has led them to that side of the House. I say again that a government serves people. And when a government delivers services, they are delivering them to real people. These are people who live, people who laugh, who cry. These are people who suffer, who yell out in pain, who love and are loved. And these are the people that we love. I believe that our new government understands this by putting forward this throne speech. Now, I'll admit as well, in regards to economy, taxes, oil and gas, that after the minister's budget update, I did receive a message from a community member that said simply, "Good job on the tax increase." And again, it was followed immediately by another text message that said, no, I'm not being sarcastic, I really do mean it. Good job on the tax increase. He told me, and I'm quoting again, "As someone who from time to time earns more than $150,000 a year, I can quite honestly tell you that I am not going to notice the change. And frankly, the things that aggravate me every day will benefit far more from my tax dollars than what I can do with those dollars on my own." He told me that he was concerned, what he was truly concerned about were seismic upgrades for his kids' schools. It was about helping those living with drug addiction, providing housing for the homeless so that playgrounds can go back to being playgrounds rather than being necessary shelters for those with nowhere else to go. He told me that he wants the housing market to be managed so that one day he and his wife could actually own a larger home for their growing family. And he said that he wanted for there to be more public transportation spending because he enjoyed living a car-free life. He intends to continue to live a car-free life. And he would like his children to be able to grow up and do so in order to help protect the environment. In short, he wants conditions to improve for everyone to be lifted up. This is a family with 2 full-time professional income earners. And because of the cost of living and rampant real estate market, even they cannot get ahead. The other day, a constituent came into my office to tell me about her rental situation. This woman was born and raised in North Vancouver. She's a single 42-year-old woman who runs her own business as a consultant. Up until very recently, she was working on full-time contracts, but eventually, of course, contracts end. She has never had a problem with her landlords, and she has rented all her life. But due to the out-of-control real estate market and commodification of homes, she has been subjected in the last several years to multiple evictions for owners' own, under the guise at least of the owner's own use in a very short period of time. She told me that 6 years ago, her rent for a basement suite, a 1-bedroom basement suite, was $700, and now it's $1,600. 2 months ago, she received another eviction notice from the home that she was renting the basement suite in. The owners are selling, and the new owners want to use the basement suite for their own purposes. So she went about to try to search for a new place to live. To date, she shared with me, she has seen nearly 80 units and applied for about a quarter of those and has yet to find another place to live. She asked her current landlord for the new owner's contact information so that she might be able to reach out to them and ask for a little bit more time to find a new rental facility. But the new owner does not want her to know who has purchased the home. And so she has absolutely no recourse, no option to try to get a little bit more time in order to find a place to live. So at 42 years old, after working for the majority of her life full-time, she is moving back with her mother. Again, these 2 stories are from people who are professional relatively high income earners. And if they can't get ahead, what hope is there for someone of lesser means? Someone like Mike, a community member in North Vancouver, who lived on the streets of Lonsdale for over 3 years before he was able to secure a corner of a floor in a flat of multiple people who were also trying to stay off the streets. What hope is there for the single mother who I met on the doorsteps during the election, the single mother of 3, who paid $42,000 for childcare last year? What hope is there for another single mother of 5 who has no childcare at all? So I ask, where was the BC Liberals' incredible economy for them at that time? I want to take a moment to also respond to the comments about the 90s. You see, I was a child in the 90s. I don't remember all of it, but I do remember some of it. High school and elementary were interesting times for me. My parents, 2 hardworking immigrants in raising me in the 90s, were able to work hard. They were able to buy a house, a real house with a yard and everything. We had access to a family doctor. Bus rides were a couple of quarters apiece. And even though I attended what was considered at the time to be one of the most troubled high schools in the province, I still had access to free after-school programs, free before-school programs, free school supplies. There were sports teams, there were special classes for those who needed help catching up, and there were programs for those who needed to get ahead. And this is important, and it was important to me because though my parents did the best that they could, like most families, they were not perfect. And there were many years when life at home was not good. And so I stayed away from that home for as much as possible. I hung out of the house after dark, maybe far longer than I should have. I snuck out at night. I skipped classes. I was aggressive. I was argumentative. I was combative. My grades dropped significantly. It was a teacher, a public school teacher, that turned it all around for me. A public school teacher that noticed that something wasn't quite right and that I was squandering my potential. I remember her coming up to me in the halls of my high school one afternoon after school, and she grabbed me by the shoulders. She turned me around and said, "Bowinn," pardon me, but what are you doing? You're ruining your life. You need to snap out of this. You need to do this better. And so I turned my life around. Instead of hanging out after dark, I spent a lot of time at my school in after-school programs. I put a lot more effort into my classes. I eventually graduated. I went to UBC. I became an engineer, and now I'm an MLA. But what would have happened to me if my teachers had been too stressed out, too overworked, too under-resourced to be able to notice that I was struggling? What would have happened? What happens to schools? What happens to the people who attend schools when schools are no longer able to function as a critical component of the social safety net that they are? What happens when children are not caught before they fall? I wonder often what would have happened to me if I had grown up, not in the 90s, but under back-to-back BC Liberal governments. It has been 16 long years, Mr. Speaker, 16 long years of people being put in the back seat, 16 long years of a government that prioritized money over people, politics over solutions, short-term priorities over long-term planning. This throne speech is about people. It turns that around. It is about prioritizing people over profits. Families, workers, small business owners, making good decisions for them. It recognizes that poverty, addiction, mental illness, those things do not happen in isolation. And homelessness, overpriced homes, tenuous rental situations, they are all connected and they demand government intervention. After people, the environment is our greatest and most important asset, and it must be defended. I believe that we need to ask ourselves what kind of future we want for our children and what kind of world we want to leave for our grandchildren. We need to ask ourselves whether we want them to have access to clean drinking water, clean air, or healthy agriculture. It is absolutely right for BC to take serious and decisive steps to protect the environment and meet our climate change goals. That's why I fully support the measures in this throne speech to increase carbon tax and put an end to the revenue-neutral nature of the tax so that families can be supported and investments can be made in green initiatives that will give us a fighting chance at saving this planet. I will be supporting this throne speech. I will be supporting this throne speech because British Columbians deserve better than what they received under the previous government. I will be supporting this throne speech because climate change, poverty, opioid crisis, opioid overdoses, homelessness and hopelessness, these are all real issues. And I do believe that this should not be a question of whether or not we can afford to resolve them, but rather a question of whether we as a society can afford not to. I'm going to end my statements there. Thank you.